The top of the hour, so let's get underway. Firstly, thank you all for joining us from Australia and across the Asia Pacific, and welcome to this Digital Enterprise Architecture Summit presentation on Human-Centred Enterprise Architecture. Well, my name is Renata and I'm Marketing Manager here at Avolution. For those of us interested in how to benefit from design thinking and how to map out personas as part of planning enterprise architecture, you're in for a treat. We're delighted today to have Dr. Christine Stephenson of Penrod Consulting to explain how to use these methods to drive business outcomes. I'm particularly looking forward to hearing about Christine's concept of delivering minimal lovable products to end users. A little more about Christine. She's worked in IT and architecture for over 20 years and has trained hundreds of architects and held positions in the healthcare, mining, government, transport, retail and finance industries. In recent times, she's led the digital workplace strategy for Rio Tinto, the world's second largest metals and mining group. And currently, she and her team at Penrod focus on coaching and mentoring clients in enterprise architecture, business architecture and business transformation practices throughout the Asia Pacific, Europe and North America. A quick housekeeping request. As Christine is talking, if you'd like to ask questions, please write them in the text Q&A. Please address questions to all participants so that everyone can see which questions have been submitted. And at the end of the main presentation, Christine will be able to respond to them. If you're ready to go, Christine, can I ask you to start today's presentation? Thank you.
Thank you, Renate, and welcome everyone, and thank you for spending your afternoon with me. As Renate said, today I'm going to talk to you about how to deliver a human-centered enterprise architecture practice. Just forwarding on my slides. And I head up Penrod Consulting. I live on the Sunshine Coast and typically reach out to my students and clients from here right across the world. Today, what I'm going to cover with you is what's our challenge today for enterprise architecture and how we practice it. I'm also going to take you through what do we mean by being human-centered. Because obviously this is really important for us to be successful as practicing enterprise architects. I'm then going to talk you through a variety of techniques and methods that are available so that we can be more human-centered. And I'm going to walk you through a simple example of how you might use a value proposition canvas to help you design your enterprise architecture practice to be human-centered. I'd like to leave you with some advice then on some of the big mistakes that enterprise architects make and share with you my advice on some of the things you can avoid doing and perhaps pick up behaviors that allow you to be more human-centered. And as Renate said before, I will have time for some questions at the end of my presentation. So let's get started with the challenge for enterprise architects today. At the end of the day, we see that the world is buzzing with a lot of people investing in human-centered design techniques and approaches. The reason why we're doing this is because we want to make sure that we're delivering valuable services to our customers. Quite often as an enterprise architect, we get swamped with just running the day-to-day business of enterprise architecture and making sure that projects are delivering successfully. But what we often fail to remember or sometimes just forget, plain old forget, is that we're here to deliver valuable services to our customers, and our customers are within the enterprise of the organization that we work in. So to start simply and to be able to take a human-centered approach, any one of you who've been on a TOGAF course or ever started a project management course would know that at the heart of everything that you do are our stakeholders. But what's really important for us as enterprise architects to know and realize is these stakeholders have concerns. And our stakeholders at the end of the day are human beings, and they have very human concerns related to the roles and the jobs that they perform in their organization. So why do we need to start with stakeholders? I'm going to talk to you a little bit about an often forgotten area when we practice enterprise architecture. Now, I use these three circles to talk about, how do we innovate and deliver great, superior services to our customers of enterprise architecture. So the area that we're really good at and are experts in is when we do feasibility studies and proof of concept projects. So the little blue circle where we attempt to determine feasibility of a project or an initiative. We're really good at coming up with the technical terminology. We love playing with the tools to then determine what's feasible and what's not. Quite often we'll work alongside someone, and typically in project management, to work out whether these initiatives and projects are financially viable. That's when we write our business cases. But the area that quite often we miss out on is the red circle or the pink circle, depending on how you want to look at that color. This is the area where we quite often forget that we need to also appreciate what is desirable to the customer. What are their needs and not just their wants? Because when we can bring these three pieces of work together in what I call desirability, viability, and feasibility, this is where innovation happens. And this is where we have the ability to deliver a wow. So let's now look at what does it mean to be human-centered, and why is it so important to appreciate what our customers desire? So I've lifted some definitions straight out of the dictionary. Human-centered means something that's marked by humanistic values and devotion to human welfare. But in your world and my world, when we talk about taking a human-centered design approach, it is about creative problem solving. It is about trying to push the envelope and truly find that innovation. It's about building deep empathy with people. So quite often we get so caught up in delivering the technology and designing the technology to fit that we quite often forget that there are people who are going to use these systems, and we need to build empathy in terms of being able to show them how to use the new technology to get their everyday work done. And the third point around, you need to keep the very people you're looking to serve at the heart of the process. So again, when you take a human-centered design approach, it's all about building empathy and building up that collaboration and environment where you're working with the very people who are going to benefit from the work that you do. So typically our customers come to us with a problem that needs to be defined, and we go through a cycle like you see on the screen right now. And in our world, especially now that Agile is an equally hot topic as human-centered design, we all talk about what's the MVP? What's the minimal viable product that we need to deliver to meet our customers' needs? Well, I like to flip that around and talk about what's actually the minimal lovable product that you need to deliver to your customers and the people who are going to use your solutions or use the products and services that you deliver. Now, that minimal lovable product is what helps organizations make change stick. So if your customers find it simple, easy, and enjoyable to interact with your architecture team, and they understand the benefits and they love the products and services that you deliver, that takes you up a much higher level of maturity in terms of partnering with the business to deliver great business outcomes. So typically when we set up our enterprise architecture practice, one of the first things we do is go and grab the good old template of the Open Groups website to start writing our enterprise architecture charter. Now, the list that you see on your screen right now are the typical contents that go into such an enterprise architecture charter. And if you remember why we write it, we write the charter because it's our agreement with the business in terms of our commitment to deliver them a set of valuable products and services. So what I'm going to focus you today on is how can you use the value proposition canvas to fill your enterprise architecture charter, because I can guarantee you by using this approach, you will move much closer to your customers because they will see the value that you offer them in terms of working and partnering with them to do business and to do great business. So we know that there are a number of human-centric methods, human-centered design methods and techniques that you can use. So I want to point out now what some of these might be that you may already be using today within your practice and within some of the projects that you might be involved in. The value proposition canvas, which I'm circling around right now, is just one of those human-centered techniques. You can use a number of other different methods to help you understand how do I set up and design my enterprise architecture practice so that I am delivering human-centered services myself. So one of the other ones that I really love is the empathy map, because that's what helps us to understand and know that we understand our customers from how they think and feel, how they see, what they do, and what they hear. And the connection between the value proposition canvas and the empathy map is very strong because it tells us about what our customers' pains and gains are. So now I'm going to talk to you about the value proposition canvas. Some of you may already know, may have already used the value proposition canvas on projects, but it would be really interesting to know how many of you have used the value proposition canvas to design your own practice. And if you haven't, then this is a great opportunity to pick it up and use it yourselves. So when you embark on your journey of designing your practice, you will, of course, draw and complete the value proposition canvas with your customers. Because your customers are consumers of your enterprise architecture services, it's really important that we understand their pains and gains and what are their jobs to be done. And as producers of enterprise architecture, we deliver services at the end of the day to relieve their pain and create gains and benefits for them. So I'm going to take you through a very simple activity and exercise. We'll start with a little activity and show you examples of a value proposition canvas for a couple of companies. And hopefully you can guess who these companies or organizations are. I'll then take you through a working example of how to populate the value proposition canvas for a couple of scenarios within an organization. So let's start with the quick activity. So let's see if you can guess who these companies are. So starting with our first one, hopefully you can all see that on your screens. The customers' jobs at the end of the day are to make additional money by renting a room, offering cheap accommodation and hassle-free booking. And if you're looking really closely at the model, I know you can guess straight away who this is. So I'll take it, given that everybody is on mute, I'm going to give you the answer. This is Airbnb's value proposition canvas. The next model is a little bit harder and comes from Alex Osterwalder's website. And the Strategizer has the value proposition canvas as a tool that you can download and fill in yourselves in your practice. So again, the jobs to be done are, we want to make things people want, improve or build a business, communicate well, great ideas, make decisions with confidence, and so on. So when you're looking at the pains and gains, I know you're looking at, the pains, I don't have much time, there's too much theory around. How can I do something simply? When you look at the products and services that this particular concept or organization offers, it's around a value proposition canvas, a book, You've got online tools and exercises you can complete. So who belongs to this canvas? It's actually the value proposition book. So Business Model Inc., who came up with this model, created and started building their own value proposition canvas before they launched the book, which is the product. So what's the process then to help you create your value proposition canvas for your practice? It's in a series of just 8 steps. Obviously, we want to start with listing who our stakeholders are, and then listing their concerns so that we understand what do they need to do in order to complete their jobs. Concerns are related to their roles, and that's what helps us identify their jobs to be done, because their concerns are to make sure that their jobs are done well. We next will identify their pains, followed by their gains. So when we look at pains, we look at what holds them back from doing their jobs well. And the gains are, if they do their jobs well, what are the benefits and what are the outcomes? We then start looking at the left-hand side of the value proposition canvas, which is around listing your products and services, and then identifying which of those products and services will actually be offered up as pain relievers and then gain creators to address the pains and gains in your customer profile. So let's look at step 1. Here's a simple example of an enterprise architecture practice and who are the typical stakeholders you might find in such a practice. We have business unit leaders, and they might be your head of finance, HR, the CEO, even the CIO. The program management office is quite often a stakeholder, as are project managers and project solution architects. And more often, the CDO is a very important stakeholder as well in your practice. Now, when we go over to look at what are some of the concerns that such stakeholders might have, and sometimes you'll find that these concerns are common with other stakeholders. A typical question to be asked is, have I invested to deliver strategy effectively? So a CEO might have that concern, so might a business unit leader. An operations manager, however, might have the concern of, how do my KPIs contribute to the business and the business performance? If I was a project manager, my concern might be which areas of the business are impacted by my project so that I can get a better understanding of my scope. So once you understand these concerns, you're ready to start the next step, which is identifying the jobs to be done. There is a brilliant framework, if you Google it on the internet, around how do you define jobs to be done, because that's what leads you to identifying how can you help support your customers through the products and services that you deliver. So again, going back to our example, typically a business unit leader whose concerns are about strategy and balancing budget and finding the right resources, you find that their jobs to be done are around strategy, strategic planning every year, doing their budget, monitoring their budget, talent management in terms of recruitment, succession planning, and doing everything else to manage their human resources. Operations in terms of just running the business. And quite often business unit leaders spend a lot of time in meetings. And what they do in these meetings is manage relationships with their peers as well as partners and other people in the organization. So let's quickly look at the jobs to be done for a PMO. There are quite a few. They manage the tactical work program because they're the ones who are keeping their eye on the ball in terms of, are these projects delivering to their KPIs as well as the benefits that were defined in each of their projects. They manage the budgets and make sure that the projects don't go over or aren't under the budget. They manage change across the programs. They coordinate change across multiple programs to make sure that the business risk is managed at the same time. They also manage schedule and quality and capacity planning, and also the context which is related to scope. So once you've identified all the jobs to be done, it's a really good idea now to go and create a matrix view of stakeholders against their concerns. Because what we want to try and do is find out which stakeholders have common concerns, because that's going to help us ensure that we can firstly prioritize and address common concerns through a good, healthy set of products and services in our catalog. Because you wouldn't want to have one product supporting just one customer or one stakeholder. You want to design your product and service catalog so that you are supporting the entire organization in the most effective way. So here is what I would like you to do, or if you were doing this exercise in real life, you would list out for the business unit leader their jobs to be done. You would then write down a whole pile of concerns that they might have, and you would then map their jobs to be done with concerns. So you see, just within the business unit leader's concerns, there are multiple questions they ask that can help solve and resolve many of their jobs that they do. So after this phone call, if you wanted to practice mapping jobs to be done to concerns, I've left you this slide so that you can go and have a go at mapping concerns and jobs to be done. And then also have a look across the business unit leader concerns to see where there are common concerns across these two roles. So I'm moving on now to the next step. Once we've identified our customers' jobs to be done, we now look at their pains and gains. So what's a pain? A pain describes something that's going to result in a bad outcome. It's a risk, it's a hindrance, it's something that's holding you back from doing your job effectively. On the other side, a gain describes the outcomes you want to achieve or the benefits that you are seeking. So I've listed for you an example of what are some of the business unit leaders' pains and gains. So a lot of the pain that business unit leaders talk to me about is there's never sufficient budgets, my resources don't have the right skills, risks are out of control, I have no data to help me make good decisions, and the quality of data is also highly questionable. In terms of gains, well, I want better business performance. I want my team to work better as well. I want to build trusted partnerships with my customers, making sure that my employees are motivated, and so on. So I'm also giving you some examples of what are some of the PMO's pains and gains as well. Quite often they get given a whole pile of projects and programs that need to be delivered, but no one's defined for them the benefits that each of these projects need to deliver against. And neither are they linked to strategic objectives so that we can understand how each project contributes to achieving strategy. In terms of gains, the PMO is very interested in aligning benefits to deliver strategy, making sure that resources are utilized and maximized, and to make sure that when change is delivered to the business doesn't feel like a fire hose of change is coming their way. So once we've completed identifying our jobs to be done as well as our pains and gains, we have essentially established what we call the customer profile. So you can use other techniques like your customer personas or your journey maps to help you also do exactly what I'm taking you through today in terms of getting to know your customer better. So when we use the value proposition now, we know that we've still got half of the model that we haven't completed. So again, in a very simple exercise, we want to complete what products and services will we offer our customers now that we understand their jobs to be done as well as their pains and their gains. So in step 6, it's all about coming up with your product and service catalog. So what's a product or service? It's something that your customer, your stakeholder can see in your shop window if you had one. It satisfies their basic needs. So the product and service on its own does not create value. It's when you actually match a product and service to the customer's jobs to be done, where it relieves pain and creates gain, is when you have found the magic and you found the wow, because you are satisfying your customer's basic needs. So how would you go about identifying your enterprise architecture services? Well, having worked for over 20 years as an enterprise architect and having established practices all over the world, these are some typical services delivered by most enterprise architecture practices. We deliver blueprints, roadmaps, prototypes, especially if you're doing design thinking and doing 2D prototyping and 3D prototyping. Enterprise architects should be offering this as a service. We help the business create strategic plans, whether they're technology strategies or business strategies. We create reference models, offer advice as a service, and of course the big managed architecture governance and operation service. We do many design reviews and complete maturity assessments as well. And quite often when we've built up a trusted partnership with the business, they often call us in to come and help them with the design of their business as well. And of course, something that we all get involved in is introducing new technologies and platforms to the organization. So if you want to use this list of products and services, by all means, or even go and do a check of your current enterprise architecture charter and see if you've got these products and services in there. So the next step we have then is to go through and identify for each product and service that you want to offer, how does this relieve the pain of your customer? And with Gain Creators, how are you going to support your customer to achieve their outcomes and benefits, and make sure that when you do this, you are indeed giving them a minimal lovable product. So what we have now then is to go through, and I will give you two examples of pain relievers and Gain Creators for business unit leaders as well as the PMO. So over here, when we do business design, we might actually help the business to create capability maturity models and do assessments against them so that they understand where the business risks are. Where do they have weaknesses in their business and across the business so that they can focus and invest on improving that. We may help them by giving them reference models to create value driver trees, depending on what industry you're in. We could help them do root cause analysis as well, because that would help them understand what the root cause problem of their pain is, so that we could then help them to understand how to solve and resolve that pain. In terms of Gain Creators, we can help them look at how to delight their own customers by looking across value streams and value chains to provide rapid customer service response, to make sure that issues are being proactively managed and are resourced appropriately. So you can see a lot of pain relievers and Gain Creators come out of the architecture practice product and service catalog. So when we then look at pain relievers and Gain Creators for the PMO, again, you can reuse value driver trees to show how investments are aligned to strategic objectives. You can provide a resource and skills view of the business as well. I'm not going to go through all of them. In terms of Gain Creators, you can show the business how they can respond in an agile way to their own customers' requests. You can show them how to maximize use of their resources and assets, and how to delight their customers through helping them using techniques like customer journey mapping and service blueprints and so on and so forth. And at the end of the day, what you're helping them also is providing them insights to make decisions quickly. So what I've walked you through so far, everything that we have put into the value proposition canvas is allowing you to remember to complete your enterprise architecture charter. So by just using a value proposition canvas, you can complete from step 1 to step 5 to fill your charter. So there's some homework for you to do. And your homework is go and look at your enterprise architecture charter and challenge yourself around, are the things that I have written in there really helping me to deliver value and enterprise architecture value to the customers that I serve? And if you find that all you did was a copy and paste of the internet and it was a document filling exercise to fill your enterprise architecture charter, I hope you now know that you've got a tool, a very simple tool to help you get started on writing a charter that actually means something to the business. So on that note, I'm going to take you through some advice. When you're setting up your enterprise architecture practice, there are some things that we are known for, and it's not good. So I'm hoping that each one of you can reflect on this and try and think about how can I use the value proposition canvas to help me not be like this and not do this. So let's get started with the first one. Many enterprise architects get accused of living in an ivory tower, and quite often I've had people tell me myself, you don't know what the business problems are. You don't know what our challenges are. And quite often, you know, they view us as, oh, you're just the person from IT. You don't know anything about our business. You're only the gadget or the propeller head person. So quite often we build up these ivory towers from where right at the top, we tell people, you know, you don't know what you're doing and I know what I'm doing and therefore you must follow. So try to avoid the ivory tower trap. The next trap we fall into is what I call the guru problem, where again, and I absolutely acknowledge that enterprise architects are very clever people, but quite often we forget to be humble. And what comes out of our mouths and the personas that we portray to our customers is how wise we are and how less wise you are. So again, I've heard lots of enterprise architects tell me, I told the business not to do that, and therefore they need to deal with the problem they've created because they should have listened to me in the first place. So if you want to deliver services that make your customers detach from you and go off and do their own thing, then you are being a guru. So this is one area we want to avoid and stop being gurus and be more humble. Another big challenge that a lot of architects have is around their artistry. I have worked with many architects over the years who will not let me see their work product. They won't let me see their model because they believe it's not perfect yet. It's not ready for you to have a look at, Christine. And what they strive for is perfection, and what they forget is one of Christine's first principles: there's no such thing as a perfect model. So again, don't spend a lot of time, because this is a big time trap for a lot of architects, and it holds them back from instead focusing on relationships with their customers by spending far too much time trying to get to a perfect model. And when you present it to your customers, they get map shock because they have no idea what you're trying to show them. But in your mind, it's an absolutely beautiful model. Why can't you see it? So again, try and avoid the artist's problem. Another problem that I have seen in a lot of teams and in a lot of architects is what I call the EMO problem. I've had architects tell me, Christine, if you want me to solve this problem, let me solve it on my own. I don't want to work with anyone because they're just going to get in my way. I can do this on my own. And that's what I refer to as being the EMO problem. One of the biggest lessons that architects have to learn is that enterprise architecture is a people business. It is not a technology business. The technology will always be there, but we need to focus on ensuring that we understand and practice how to collaborate across the business, but also with our technology partners and our vendors and providers to work together. You cannot solve problems as an architect working on your own. The next problem, I used to work for the Emirates Group, and in the feedback that we received the first year that I was there is that Christine's team's worse than the Dubai police. So if you've ever been in the Middle East, you'll appreciate that that is pretty harsh feedback. So again, reflecting on that feedback, it's really important that people understand you are not there to stop them. You are not the ministry of no. You have to be able to, again, collaborate with people and solve problems together. And if you are inclined to say no, your behavior and practice needs to be, let's work on this together and let me help you understand alternate ways and solutions to solve this problem rather than saying no. Now, the next problem is, again, something that gets, harsh feedback that gets sent to us quite often, and what I call the propeller head problem. We are highly technical people. We have highly complex topics running around in our heads all the time. And the challenge is, if I sound like I am this genius, then people are going to listen to me. So I'm going to tell you that customers don't listen to propeller heads, and that we need to be able to change our language and make it so simple that, as one of my former bosses said, I should be able to explain it to my mother and she should be able to understand what I'm talking about. So again, remember, keep your language and anything that you do simple. So our job is to take the complexity in the organization and communicate it in a way that is simple. So the last one I'm going to share with you is something that is very common to all of us. And I know that most of you would have seen a variation of this model in terms of what did the customer actually ask for and what did they actually get delivered. So this image has now been updated to include agile projects as well. So if you can see in the bottom left-hand side, how much documentation is actually being done by all us agile people, absolutely none. So again, I don't need to say any more in terms of how do we need to get closer to our customers. It's not by ignoring the customer problem. It's about getting closer to that problem and getting to know our customers much better. So that's pretty much it from me. Renate, I think I'm pretty much on time and we've got about 20 minutes for questions.
Wonderful. Yes, you've done great. Thanks, Christine. That was an excellent presentation, and I wanted to kick off actually with a question of my own, which is, I really liked your value proposition canvas method, and I thought it sounded like a fantastic kind of North Star for navigating what can be sometimes really tricky politics, kind of a cheat sheet for focusing on kind of what's motivating people and what's worrying them. And I wondered, when you work with organisations, how often do people go through that process of updating that? Or, do you recommend that people put a chart on the wall and kind of keep it in front of them all the time and continue to kind of update it? How do you kind of use it in practice?
So they're absolutely a combination of models. There's not just one model that helps me design my practice or my customers' businesses. So I use the value proposition canvas. Absolutely, it's on the wall, because if it's not visible, no one values what that model is actually telling you. It's a good reminder every time. So we use the value proposition canvas as our quarterly reviews with our customers. Because we know what we're here to do and the products and services we're delivering, it's a good sense check when you do your quarterly review to look at how healthy are these services and how effective are they at relieving the pain and creating gains for my customers. I also use the personas as well, because again, when you're thinking about your customers, it's important to always put yourselves in their shoes and use persona profiles along with the value proposition canvas to make sure you're delivering great services to your customers.
Okay, excellent. A question here, it's coming to the chat from Esther. There are always many jobs to be done. Any tips for how to narrow these down to priorities?
Absolutely. I think there are two things in there. One is there are many jobs to be done. And then it's a different question when you ask the question about priorities. It's really important to make sure that when you're thinking about jobs to be done, that you always have a catalog and a repository of what are your customers' jobs to be done. Now, when I went through this exercise of using the value proposition canvas, for an enterprise architecture practice, there are only about a handful of customers that you are servicing on a day-to-day basis through strategic planning, through blueprinting, through doing design reviews, through doing your contributing to the investment life cycles and prioritization. There are seriously only a handful of customers. So it's not that hard to come up with a catalog of what are their jobs to be done. All you need to do is go to their capability, to your capability map, and that will tell you what is each person's role. So a business unit leader can be anyone across finance, HR, as well as security, as well as IT, as well as people in operations. Their jobs, their role doesn't change. The content of their job might change. So focus on their role and don't go down into their day-to-day tasks or activities. The second question that I'll answer a little bit differently is around how you prioritize who you serve. Again, that has to come down to how large is your practice? How many people do you have in the team? Do you outsource, for example, solution architecture work? Because again, understanding the way your practice is set up will allow you to focus. For example, if you've outsourced solution architecture to a partner, it allows you then to prioritize and focus your time on business unit leaders and the PMO, and as well as your privacy people and your security people as well. I hope that answered your question, Esther.
Thanks. Right, we've got quite a few questions coming in, so I'll crack on with them. Question from Radha. Hi, Christine, wonderful presentation. I have a question on how do you make sure you get the ear of business stakeholders to initiate the value proposition canvas? And my second question is about instant gratification. How do you tackle this?
Take it instant gratification is how do you stay motivated at work when you're constantly being bashed?
Or possibly giving the business instant gratification.
Instant gratification. Okay.
That's how I read it, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, that makes better sense. So to answer your question, Radha, one of the challenges I've always faced and a problem that enterprise architects get challenged with is, the most difficult problem in the world for them to solve is getting to work with the business and feeling like you need to have permission to do that. What I'm going to tell you is that in my practice, I don't wait for permission, and I apply a technique called architecture by stealth. So quite often organizations are set up with IT business partners who are having conversations with the business every day. And they're the ones who are most petrified of enterprise architects going out and talking to the business about even starting something like using a value proposition canvas. So here's where you need to build credibility and earn the trust of your business partner and work with them to get out to have these conversations with the business. And again, it's not about somebody saying, I now bless you, go forth and do it. It's about you working and earning the trust with your business partners to now go with them the next time they're meeting a business person and saying, hey, we are looking at improving our services. We would like to invite you to a workshop with us. You don't need to tell them you're going to use a value proposition canvas. All you need to do is tell them that you would love to have them contribute to how we might improve the services that we offer and deliver to you. Hope that answered your question, Radha.
Okay. Question from Dion. How to help some user undergo the change we are doing? Sometimes other divisions would also reject the proposition because that's how things always go and don't want to change. Is there some approach we can use? Thanks.
Absolutely. There is, Dion, another framework that I use all the time. That's not an enterprise architecture framework. It's actually a change management framework called ProSci. And within it is their framework is called the ADKAR model. You raise awareness, create desire, give someone knowledge, allow them to achieve, and then reinforce it. It's one of the best models that I've ever used to help people change and understand that benefits will not be realized. So it doesn't matter what product and service you're trying to deliver, you will not realize or deliver those benefits to your customers unless you go through those steps. And you need to firstly make your business and your customers aware of the services in a way that is valuable in terms of creating desire. And once they desire and want more, you give them the knowledge which tells them, and to use an example with strategic planning, if I give you a capability map which highlights where your risks are in your business and helps you to identify where to invest in order to achieve your strategic objectives more effectively, that's great knowledge that you're giving your customer. And then when you come in and help them to do that capability maturity assessment, get the results, help them to prepare their budgets, which they then see as being realized through the budget approval process, that basically says you've taken them through that whole cycle of awareness, desire, knowledge, achieving, and reinforcing when they do the same thing the next year. So businesses are people in businesses are human beings, and we need to help them to change and make that change stick. So again, go look at the ProSci ADKAR model. Yeah, I'm ready for
Fantastic.
the next one.
That sounds like a whole nother webinar, actually,
Yeah,
Christine.
whole nother seminar.
Okay, so another question from Esther. How can architects create a culture of shared values and accountability governance?
That's a really good question, Esther, because I see a lot of practices fail because architects will not release information to anyone. And it comes back to, waiting for perfection. This is what I call the artist problem. You've got a lot of information, but when you say this is the exclusive domain of the enterprise architects and therefore no one else can get access to it, you immediately shut the doors down to collaboration. So if you want to be able to work with other people and other teams, you must be open and available and accessible and share even if your models and your data are not perfect, because it's through collaborating with other people that you will improve not only your own understanding and your own models, you will be helping them gain the insights that they need to make better quality decisions. Okay.
Okay, sorry. Just had to unmute again there. Sorry. So
Yeah, right.
a really pertinent, timely question from Joanna. Thank you, Joanna. Is EA too much of an investment for a company, especially during the ongoing pandemic? How do you think EA will help a post-COVID world?
It is a good question, and it's just bringing back a flood of memories. It's not just COVID. It's how does enterprise architecture perform in any crisis that the organization's going through? So when I moved to Dubai to be the chief architect at the Emirates Group, I had the oil crisis, it was there. Shortly followed by the global financial crisis. And then the next year, the stock market crashed. And another couple of years, something else crashed. This is whenever an organization or a company faces a crisis, it is the time for enterprise architects to step up and help the business through the crisis. There should never, ever be a question of, can we afford enterprise architecture? Because we cannot afford not to have enterprise architecture. Because again, the team that has a comprehensive view of all the change that's happening across the organization, they're the enterprise architects. The people that know, or the persons that know how all of these things fit together. And if you take this out, what else will break as a result of it? The people with that knowledge are the enterprise architects, because it's just not about technology. It's about the people connections, the process connections, the data connections, and the technology or the tools connections. We're the only group across the organization that knows how everything fits. So in the middle of a crisis, you want to take away your biggest asset. I think whoever does that is making a really, really bad decision.
Yeah, good. Founder Tim O'Neill talks about not wanting executives to be playing Kaplunk with the technology in the business. What happens if I pull this stick out? Yeah. Nice question here from Anonymous. Really cutting to the chase. Who is the architect's best friend in his or her organisation? Have you got any guidance on that one, Christine?
Look, I think the one thing I've learned being an enterprise architect is I'm not there to be anyone's friend in the business. I'm there to do my job and to do my duty. And for me, you will always end up having those times where you want to have a whinge about your boss, about your frustrations, about not being able to move forward with a particular initiative. So you must always have a friend at work who absolutely understands the business context and the challenges that you are facing. Someone who you completely trust, because you can't afford to have this person go and blab your innermost and deepest thoughts about the HR director, for example. It needs to be somebody who you feel safe having conversations with. So in a lot of organizations that I've worked in, I've always had a buddy, and that buddy has either been a colleague or has been a mentor who's been able to help me think out my thoughts and challenges and think through the logic so that I can then find a better way forward. I also have buddies who have not worked in the company that I was currently working in. They were outside, who appreciate my profession and my career and who have helped me again through, when I've come to crossroads and I'm very frustrated. They've helped me think about, how do I approach this problem and deliver it well? So I hope that answered your question, Anonymous.
Yeah, and it also makes me think of another way, another question along that bent, which is, are there any natural allies for kind of the enterprise architecture team within the organisation that you've identified in the many workplaces that you've worked in?
Absolutely. I think your number one ally is the business partner team. Without earning their trust, you can't have conversations with the business. I've worked in organizations where the CIO has refused to let me go and talk to business people when it's part of my job. So I've had to find ways to work with the business partners to bring that intelligence in so that we can design the enterprise architecture, so to speak. The other ally will always be, funnily enough, vendors. Some vendors, and again, because I've worked for very large, big brand organizations, the vendors quite often have a very strong relationship with key people in the business. So quite often you can, through a back door, gather intelligence and work through the vendor sometimes to achieve the outcome that you're after. It might sound counterintuitive to some people, but it's a technique that's worked for me.
So the interesting approach. I think we've kind of got to the end of the questions for the time being, with quite a list there. Unless anyone has any others, we'll wait a moment in case they want to post them. Whilst we're doing that, I just wanted to, before bringing the session to a close, remind everyone that the next presentation on our agenda is by the City of Amsterdam on consolidating government architectures, and that's coming up about 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, around 4 p.m. for those of you joining us from Singapore, and that's 9, the start of the day, British summertime. So I'll round out the presentation or the session today and say thank you so much, Christine, for a really fascinating contribution to our summit. Oh, there we go. That's how you can find Christine. Well done. And we'll leave it there for today.